certainly if something is an open park, that's desirable, that we've decided and prior councils have decided, but also this is kind of a secondary route that if we don't like it, I think we should look at potentially changing it in the future, but I think it meets what there is currently.
Yeah, so I'm not disagreeable to this.
Okay. I don't know how into the, trying to remember how into the review of the couple variances, I believe, and,
Well, this was a decision, so we,
Yep,
yeah.
this is a decision.
Yeah, so there's a summary, I put a summary somewhere, I can't find it myself, but I tried to put a summary at the end of the current staff report about the application, what was still remaining to be discussed. So that might be a helpful page to refer to. So I think topics discussed, I don't know where it went, but
So again, just clarity, the stop was, do they have to have in that open space accessibility to the public? And that is not our intent
that was.
on this, correct?
Correct, that's,
Okay.
that doesn't have to be an intent. There's that route or doing something that makes it more viable to continue agricultural use.
so page 4 of the staff report has the summary of discussion items. So I think a couple items include, right now there's a recommended condition of approval that they see the public right-of-way with a native planting so that they meet more of the design objectives. The applicant was open to discussing an architectural theme for the 10 new lots that could be applied as a deed restriction. Currently, that's not in the resolution, so if that's something we wanted to add to further meet our design objectives, we would just need to make a slight tweak to that resolution.
Can I ask a question on that one?
Yep.
Can you give an example of like something we could, I like the idea of what I think that means, but I'm trying to think of how that looks in
Yeah,
practice.
Polson Farms had one. It wasn't like incredibly detailed. I'm trying to see if I can find, there was an email to Counselor Nichols, but it talked about trying to have agricultural rural themes in the architecture, so
Okay.
they could certainly have something about it, like the slope of the roof or something. So that's something that we would work with the applicant to make it doable and feasible. I don't think it has to be super detailed. I don't think it'll be very enforceable if it's super detailed, but we can certainly apply an architectural theme.
Okay. How does council feel about that as an added condition? Everything okay? As an added condition to this, like the previous OSMP.
I think it makes sense, just for the sake of trying to maximize the number of design objectives that we're achieving.
Yeah. And I agree that making it too specific is tough to enforce, but also tough to just kind of, it makes it more difficult. I think if we get a more general something of agricultural,
So we could bring it back with the final plat so that you'll
Okay.
have a chance to see it.
I'd be in favor of that.
Me too.
I think everyone is, so.
I'll make a motion to make that edit.
A second. Second?
Second.
Perfect. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
So then, then I think one item is the septic sites. Right now, well, and actually the applicant might have more information now that you have someone out there, but lot 1, block 5, there might be a slight conflict with the septic. Do you have more information now?
You want me to go?
Yeah, go right
That'd be
ahead.
great.
My name's Marcus Lee, 22901 Oakdale Drive. Because of the rain we've been getting,
Oh, yeah.
Andy's supposed to come out and do the septic stuff, but they just haven't been able to make it out yet, so.
Fair enough.
Yeah. You want me to stay up here,
If you'd like to speak on anything, or if you have any, you know.
or? Yeah, I mean, as long as it keeps going smooth, I guess. I'm just saying,
Fair
Just try
enough.
not to mess it up.
I'll just sit here.
That was good.
So yeah, lot 1, block 5, engineering, there's the matter of future right-of-way if that open space Outlot A were to ever redevelop, we're trying to make sure that it would be a permittable roadway where it's currently shown. And so when I last spoke with the applicant and working with engineering, we think that it needs to move at least 9 feet to the west, and it's subject to the city engineer approval once we have that plan to kind of further look at it. Which may have a conflict with the critical component of the septic site for Lot 1, Block 5. So if there were to be a critical conflict, they would either need to find 2 new sites on that lot, or to have a portion of it off-site, we'd have to go through a PUD process. So if we have any feedback from council as to what option they would prefer if we do encounter that conflict, at this point I'm hopeful that we won't have a conflict. But is that small chance, and just understanding, would it be worthwhile for him to go through a PUD, or would we really want him just to get 2 new septic sites?
Thoughts on that, guys?
I would imagine the simpler choice is preferred. So if they can find it. I would rather not go through a PUD process if we don't need to.
Yeah, I don't think. we
Keep
need
it
to
simple.
Make them do it if
Right,
there's
that's helpful,
an
thank you.
option.
Okay, so then we have the variances, is how I framed the discussion. So the first one is the exemption from the OSMP requirement for a 100-foot perimeter buffer zone for portions of the site abutting the public street. So this would primarily impact the existing lots, and the practical difficulty being that these are existing structures that would conflict with the 100-foot requirement. A proposed condition of approval for that variance is that they do plant that buffer where there isn't a conflict with the existing structure. And then variance 2 is the exemption for all OSMP lots to front an internal paved street. Again, the existing lots on Oakdale do not meet this requirement, and that being the primary reason for the practical difficulty. There was a potential condition of approval by staff that the 2 driveway access on Lot 1, Block 4 be limited down to 1. However, even his own neighbors were really opposed to that change because of the farming equipment and trucks that access the site. They would rather see it be able to do a loop than to have something back out onto Oakdale. So Planning Commission did not agree with that condition, and staff is fine with that condition being removed. It was just a potential one to add.
So it's not in there?
It's not currently in there, it's the Planning Commission recommendation. And then next variance, a 91-foot setback from the front setback for one of their agricultural structures. It's supposed to be 100 feet if it's an agricultural structure. With the new right-of-way being dedicated, it will now become 91 feet. Again, practical difficulty is an existing building that they currently rely on for their operations. And then the proposed condition is basically the same thing as variance 1, plant a buffer where it won't conflict with the structure. Those are the 3 variances. And then we have a CUP, but maybe just pause here for the variance discussion.
Anything stand out to you guys on those 3?
When we say plant the buffer, what does that mean?
So the 100-foot buffer, the 100-foot buffer required for OSMP, I do think it's very clear, other than they're supposed to have a planted buffer of 100 feet. So we will need a landscaping plan to show that they're meeting that. Let me see if I can pull it up. But it's unfortunately not very clear. The one for the 91-foot setback, I imagine it would be I'm imagining it would be the clause that we have for flexibility for setback. Basically that planting, and we could certainly apply that same formula to the buffer for the rest of the site as well for the OSMP standards.
So does this mean like overstory and understory trees?
And shrubs.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
And they've got them all on site, so.
Yeah, well, they do have some existing buffer areas,
Yeah.
I believe, so obviously they can count that towards the buffer. But the areas that there would be areas that do need to get some trees in for it to be compliant.
For me, the horseshoe access and stuff, that is part of the variance to keep that, correct?
It's not really a variance to keep it. It was more of, so the intent of that internal rule was, in my mind, likely because if we're going to have these denser clustered housing, we don't want all of them to have access onto a collector street such as Oakdale. And so a way to minimize the impact of granting the variance to allow these 2 lots to remain was remove one of the driveway accesses for this lot. So it's only 1 driveway that we're granting indefinitely. But again, the use of this house or the use of this property for the agricultural use, there was, the applicant had concerns, the neighborhood had concerns, which I was, good on you guys.
Yep.
Because I was surprised, they're like, no, let them keep it.
Yep,
And so planning commission felt that that was, not necessary for the variance, so.
that's what I want. I want to make sure we keep, or they're able to keep close to that loop and those two driveways. Okay.
Anything else on the variances?
Make a recommendation if there's no other discussion on all three variances to approve.
Okay. Do you want to make that motion, or do you want to,
I will make that motion.
I'll second.
all right, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then we have, is there anything else?
Yeah, there's one more, it's the
No, yeah,
conditional
there's-
use
yep.
permit, so it might be back in the slides, Jay. We just need to look at, perfect. One more slide. Perfect, conditional use permit. So lot one, block 4 is the applicant's homestead. And they have several existing agricultural structures that are allowed with the size of property that they have, but now they're going down to a 4-acre parcel. They can have, as a CUP, they can have agricultural structures as long as it's a property that is adjacent to an actively farmed property under the same ownership. So we can do a CUP. The applicant has agreed to remove a couple of the buildings, and that has been identified. It says shed to be removed, but the CUP would grant an accessory structure footprint of 7,428 square feet to remain. And that is including some conditions of approval, such as they have to remove the 2 buildings that were identified, and then should outlot A no longer be farmed, and/or the accessory structures are no longer used for agricultural purposes only, then the footprint must be reduced to the by right limit for a 4-acre parcel. So essentially, we would revoke the CUP when they're no longer meeting the standard for the CUP to be issued. So tying it to that use, the agricultural structures as well as the agricultural field of outlot A. And that is what's currently proposed in the resolution.
Thank you, makes sense to me. Any questions? Dean?
Clear to me. If there's no discussion, I'd recommend approval of the COP as written.
Okay, hold on, I'll make the motion then, if that's okay, to approve, let's see, the variances we already did, so, motion to approve resolution 2024-50, approving the preliminary plat, and 2024-51, approving the CUP. Second.
Second.
Beat you, just beat
You did.
Sorry?
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Good job, you guys.
Okay, and then on to item 8D, which is Chastic Farms rezoning preliminary plat and PUD.
Thank you. You can go to the next slide, Jay. So this is a request from Chuck Real Estate and Development and Temple Real Estate, doing business as Emerald Rose LLC. It is for a 116 family residential subdivision that also includes 7 outlots, and it's at 7600 Maple Hill Road. An off-road trail will also be provided along the north boundary of the project in compliance with our 2040 Parks and Trails map. And that eventually, with the property to the east, will connect down to the existing trail system in place at Bass Lake Crossing. Next slide. So the first part of the request is a rezoning from RSF2, one of our standard single-family residential districts, to a PUD. And staff finds there is reasoning to support the rezoning request. This is a policy choice where the city has a high degree of discretion. Next slide. And so the standards, when we're talking about rezoning a PUD, it must satisfy standards such as it cannot be in conflict with the comprehensive plan, cannot be in conflict with the intent of the underlying zoning district, and is compatible with the surrounding uses, is not in conflict with other provisions of the city code, is of sufficient size, composition, and arrangement that it's not, that it isn't dependent upon any other subsequent phase or unit, does not create an excessive burden on parks, streets, or other facilities and utilities which serve or propose to serve the development, will not have an undue and adverse impact on the reasonable enjoyment of the neighboring property, and the quality of the building and site design shall substantially enhance the aesthetics of the site. And create a public benefit that is greater than what would be achieved otherwise. Next slide. So the preliminary PUD development plan, it has some flexibilities in it as well as proposed public benefits. One of the main standards up for discussion is the open space standard. They do have to meet a 12% open space rule, which is required of lots of 55 feet wide. And there is a 33.58 net acre site, and so they do need a minimum of 4.03 acres of open space. They did provide an exhibit that shows the area outside of the floodplain is about 4.48 acres, which is about 13.3%. However, some of that open space is not usable in terms of it won't be accessible, but it would be more of a view than a usable space. And the applicant does have some examples of the anticipated view. And so the site is taking on a great deal of stormwater from the west, north, east, and south, as it is the relative low point of the area. And the city council can deviate from our open space standards when there are site constraints that justify that. And so part of the question is, do we have something to justify some of the open space not being recreational accessible? Some of the requested flexibilities include deviations from our RSF 3 dimensional standards, so a minimum lot area of 6,875 square feet, minimum lot width of 55 feet, a side setback of 7.5 feet, and a rear setback of 25 feet, but two lots they're requesting would have a 20-foot setback, lots 28 and 87 as currently shown. Additionally, 20 of the lots would have to have the lot width measured at the minimum required front setback. We do allow that in cul-de-sacs, but not necessarily, we don't allow it on curves. And so basically they're requesting that some of the lots that are on curves be allowed that flexibility. Additionally, they are requesting a 60% maximum garage frontage flexibility instead of 55%. Next slide. And so this is a visual of the open space. They have taken out the area that is the actual corridor, which is under, it was in floodplain. And I've taken out the outlot in the middle south portion of the site because that is entirely under floodplain. So the calculation that I've provided in the staff report takes out all floodplain to our knowledge and still is above the 4.03 acres that are required. It's really just a matter of, are we the view station areas that are not floodplain, or is that open space? Because we do say in our code that open space should be usable and accessible. Next slide. But there are two view station corridors, there are two view station corridors they've created to try to really incorporate that space. So one is across the entrance of the development, and then one is in the northeast corner of that interior block. Next slide. The proposed PUD public benefits from the applicant's narrative include stormwater management design that includes offsite drainage, a variety of home exterior designs. When we say that, we require 5 styles for the PUD, and they've provided 12. And an internal private trail sidewalk system that provides view sheds of the hydraulic green corridor, improved public streets if necessary, depending upon the Maple Hill Road feasibility study. That is what it was put in the narrative, the applicant's words, and a 60-foot setback from Maple Hill Road open space area. So there's an open space area that is 60 feet in addition to an additional setback for the houses along that road. And then the staff also identified some additional PUD public benefits, collaboration with adjoining landowners. They did work extensively with the Bergeron team to the east to have some connections there, road connections, as well as to better accommodate drainage. and they have extensive internal landscaping. I believe some requirements are tripled in their plan, some requirements are doubled. And then they are using primarily native plants in their landscaping, and they are using primarily landscaping species that are in our Northeast District list. Next slide. For the landscaping, one of the questions so the buffer yard ordinance requires a rear setback to be maintained between similar districts, and that's the buffer yard that they would be applying to the east and south property lines. Typically, RSF3 is what we use for PUDs when we're applying the buffer standard, which has a 30-foot rear setback. However, Bass Lake Crossing has a 25-foot rear setback. Fairway Shores has a 25-foot rear setback. And so Planning Commission and staff felt that that was appropriate here. And that similarly was what was approved for the buffer setback for Fairway Shores when that was reviewed last month. And staff also recommends the PUD approvals handle the setback in this area instead of a separate conservation easement, since no plantings are required. So we would handle as part of the HOA documents and with the approvals for the PUD. Next slide. The preliminary sidewalks and trails, staff does recommend for the sidewalk to actually wrap around the internal block of homes to provide a continuous path and minimize street crossings. Right now they have the sidewalk was a little less contiguous. There are areas where you would have to cross, and we think it would actually make more sense and require less pavement if there was just the internal sidewalk system around that interior block. And then the trail, there are areas with that northern trail that they are within the wetland buffers. And so they do have to make some adjustments to move it at least 5 feet from the edge of the private street, as well as outside of those buffers. And then the trail also has to go up to the east property line to provide that connection for the trail easement with Fairway Shores. Next slide. The applicant would like a fence and berm along the northern boundary of the property to provide screening for residents. They wanted it closer to the homes, but staff is very concerned about the maintenance logistics of that, as well as there's concern that it really would block off that trail, making it look like it's a private trail instead of a public trail. And so staff would encourage the applicant for the screening in this area to be landscaping, but if a fence and berm is desired, it could make sense as long as it's located on the property line or as close as possible, considering the berm it would have to, might be slightly off, but moving it as far north as possible so that the trail is viewable. And that was the other thing, is the fence shouldn't go any further past the west property line of the lot furthest west up there, so that the trail, it does have a visible connection to the road that's not blocked by the fence. Preliminary plat, so if all flexibility requests are approved, then the preliminary plat does comply with the applicable ordinance and requirements. Next slide. So the applicant would like to discuss the extent of the off-site road improvements required of the project. Staff recommends the council first consider the other merits of the PUD standards and proposed public benefits. If the standard for PUD approval, we feel that has been met, then the discussion of the logistics to focus on the road improvements would be most worthwhile at that point. Staff report identifies a few areas for discussion, which I can further outline when we get to that point in the discussion. But at this time, the resolution calls for them to comply with the feasibility study. And that would be what prevails at this point if that were to be approved. Next slide. So Planning Commission and staff recommend approval of the following. It's the ordinance rezoning to a PUD, which requires a 4/5 majority of the council. The summary ordinance for publication, and then we have the resolution with findings of fact for the rezoning, the resolution for the PUD development plan. That is the meat of the zoning district, so that's probably if any changes are needed to be made to the approvals, that's the one that we need to look at. And then resolution approving the preliminary plat. If the council finds that the application does not meet the standards for PUD approval, then findings of fact should be provided to staff, and we'll bring that back as a resolution at the next council meeting.
Okay, thank you. So I think as Natalie suggested, let's look at the PUD portions first and then we can dive into other.
I do apologize, the applicant does have a presentation that includes some visuals of what they're thinking for the hydraulic corridor, so that might be helpful
Okay.
for the discussion.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Jay, he's actually gonna go ahead and just run it, because he did it last time and it worked really well.
Okay.
That's okay. Yeah, he was able to run it really
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm Beth Husted with Track Development, and
I'm Ben Krisnak with Hempel Real Estate. This just takes about 1 minute to load up here.
Could I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
Is Mr. Lindgren from Dorsey and Whitney attending tonight?
No.
Is there a reason why?
I think we wanted to work through this collaboratively right now.
Okay, all right. I'm just surprised given the letter that we received.
Right. Very expensive.
And I know you guys have read the letter, and so you understand, the legality of everything.
Well, I won't concede to agreeing to your attorney's legal
we didn't ask you
analysis.
to. We didn't ask
Yeah.
you to.
Well, you did when you sent us the letter.
Well, we can get to the improvements on the public.
We will.
Yeah. All right, so Chastic Farm.
Chatting up. That's funny, last time my computer didn't work. I don't know, it's his computer. We can certainly pull the slides up on.
All right,
our
you
end
guys
anytime.
just
Yep.
run.
Sorry about that.
I hate when you test it and it works,
Yeah.
and then you go back in and it doesn't
It
work.
does.
Yeah.
It's gonna take me a hot minute because it
Okay.
actually closed out on me.
So,
Well-
yeah, I think there's a couple items in this presentation, but one of the main, during planning commission, council member Lanterman asked about the Greenway corridor and where I'd gotten that information. And I think this will help a little bit just to give, and I think Natalie, staff had recommended that we bring some visuals to show some cross-sections, to give you a little bit better idea of what that will look like, or what we're proposing it to look like. And
That's not the actual property right there, is it?
No, it's not, and I'm so.
There's a
Rows are too straight.
So just to kind of start from the beginning, this is the proposed layout. We think it's a really nice layout. It has a lot of curves to the streets, not creating kind of a barracks feel to it. It has a very nice flow to it. Obviously, we have a lot of off-site stormwater coming to our site, so we do have a number of ponds that we're accommodating on this site. We do have a sidewalk coming in, both along Maple Hill up to our up to the connection to the entrance, and then we have a sidewalk that's going to run really around this perimeter block, and then we have, as Natalie did a nice job talking about, we have a trail on the north end of the site as well.
Is that sidewalk that you were talking about, is that the same as what staff is recommending?
If they've changed it to be entirely around the perimeter, then yeah, that's what we had recommended, so that's new to the
That-
plan.
It hasn't actually been changed on this, but
Okay.
I think
That is-
That's a good idea, and so,
totally
yeah,
reasonable and makes
yep.
complete sense, and also eliminates additional sidewalk and hard surface and some more stormwater issues. So
Right.
I think it's a good idea. We also are providing stormwater storage, or proposing to do that for the adjacent property development to the east of us. So we are helping with some of their storage issues too. So we're taking on stormwater from the east. We're taking on a significant amount of stormwater from the south that comes literally from the golf course. So it comes crosses underneath Casad 10 and comes through the system that, that MI has in here and then runs through, through our hydraulic system. We also are taking a significant amount currently from the west. So we are having to handle those existing conditions, and I think that it's possible, I've discussed this with the engineers, it's possible that in the future when property to the south develops and property to the west develops, that they'll have stormwater management systems that will help alleviate some of that, but.
And when you say south, like, more like south, southwest?
Well, it's actually the golf course south, coming from the golf course, yeah, yeah.
Okay, we can go to the next page. So, why are we here talking about PUD? Really, it's to hit a lot of the kind of conflicting
Code.
components that we do need to hit a certain density on the site, and it gets really challenging with all the stormwater ponding, et cetera, we're doing. So we had to get some 55-foot lots in here. It's not a ton. I think we have about
101.
101.
101, 55, and,
No, we're 53% 65-foot lots,
actually,
right? Or more?
it's,
Mhm.
we're 53% or 56% of over 7,500 square foot lots. So, we may have 55-foot lots, but some of them may be 7,500 square feet, or,
Yeah.
so.
Our average lot size far exceeds the minimum lot size, so we're at 8,200 square feet on our average lot. So it's not a small lot development. These are all good sized lots. We're not building tiny homes here. There are a couple lots that need a little lesser setback on the rear, and that's because they're on a corner, or on a curve, and made it challenging to lay it out.
And then we talk about the minimum garage frontage, or maximum. We want to be able to do 3-car garages.
In a number of these sites, like,
Keeps fewer cars on the, on the street and provides additional storage for the residents, provides us ability to,
provide some.
nicer homes. And then we talk
Talk about
the side yard setbacks. I think the code is 5 and 10, and we just would like to go to 7.5, and 7.5 allows us to center the house. You don't have any of this right-hand, left-hand situation with the garage doors all having to be on the same side, so you can hit that 15-foot with a 5 and a 10 every.
every spot.
So we can go to the next slide. It's just another look at the so I just want to point out, because basically these two lots,
We needed
20-foot
because
of that curve in the street.
Which two?
It's 26, is that 26 and
Okay.
87?
That's what I thought, yeah.
Yeah, 20 and 87.
Right, so you go to the next page.
Let's talk about the
City benefits.
obviously, there's still a lot of,
Off-site construction that we're proposing to do, carrying Maple Hill down to County Road 10. At least 75% of it, of the width. Got double and triple
Landscaping.
in certain places. Obviously, a lot of third-party stormwater
the different sidewalks and trails that we're
providing. And then there was, there's a 60-foot setback.
back from Maple Hill Road, so it provides a nice green corridor there. And we worked really closely with the Bergeron
Group to
help them manage their stormwater. We provided a couple different connections, so they'll have emergency egress. Go ahead.
Can I ask a couple questions about this slide?
Yep.
The public viewing stations, what does that entail? Is that just a?
Okay, that's where we're gonna go. Yeah,
Okay.
yep, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. right on cue. Okay.
Beth, you go.
Oh, and just, yeah, we were, we're down to 116 lots. We lost a lot in order to provide an additional access to the property and the development to the east. So we do, and we are providing 2 separate access points for that project. And I do think that, this is just my, that the people that are living in this community will use Maple Hill Road, but they will also use Fur Lane. So I would say there's going to be a portion of the neighbors that don't go out onto Maple Hill Road, but go out Fur Lane. And that's just a reality, and we have met with the neighbors about that and discussed that, so.
But it's also assuming that that proceeds.
Right, and I think my only knowledge of it is that they got preliminary plat approval.
Yep.
And we're not there, so. And then,
We did propose that if that doesn't go forward for some reason, we'd try to work out a deal to just at least get our road through to make that connection, because it's just a very small sliver. The southwest corner of the we call the Lure parcel, Bart Bergeron's proposed development, so we can make that connection, you know, at our expense, then we would have a couple different access points.
the next slide, isn't it? So this is just a little bit of an explanation of the open space hydraulic corridor. And these are just,
Yeah, that's,
okay. So I've got a cross-section, excuse me, a cross-section, this is A, which is this cross-section here that you're looking at with one pond, and then the hydraulic corridor, and you can see the back property lines of each house, and then the distance between. That's this particular section. And then this is section B, which shows we actually have two ponds. We have a hydraulic green corridor, and the second pond, and then more green space. This area here is where we've got one of the view corridors. So we're proposing that people that are walking in through our subdivision and people off-site that are coming through and are on the trail system, whether it's internal or proposing to go here or coming from here. There is a view station that we're proposing here, and another view station here where there will be like a place to sit down and either rest and look at the open space. But we really preferred not to have the trail. We did have a trail that ran through the middle of it, but we were trying to at least give a little bit more privacy to the homeowners that live there, but also allowing people to come and enjoy the view and the open space. So that was our, the hydraulic green corridor has been designed by Minnesota State stormwater best practices, and the Minnesota has a stormwater manual that they actually speak specifically about making an effort as a developer to minimize infrastructure and to try to integrate natural resources and create a natural corridor as opposed to always having such hard structure and infrastructure. It does a lot more pollution control and sediment, and it cleans the water as it flows, and they ask you as a developer to make an effort to work with the natural and original and existing drainage. And so this drainage coming from the south. There's some, MI has done some stormwater ponding here, and but it still overflows and comes through here, and then we've got, we're again catching from the west, so, and then we're catching from the east. So I think we're accomplishing a lot in this open space and this corridor, and we're providing what we feel is you know, an aesthetic for the people that live there, but also people that are walking can enjoy it. So I think is it. That one's just, that was from, it's not showing up. You're clicking it, but he's not. Okay. Okay. These are just ideas. These are showing how ponds adjacent to a hydraulic corridor, and that it would be hopefully, you know, prairie grasses or native grasses and native plantings. And that's just the ponds, giving you an idea of the ponds adjacent, and that stuff also, what it could look like. And these are factors that I took from the state's best practices manual. And these are some of the things that consider all factors as the water moves from the land surface to receiving waters. There's a treatment train, and it actually does treat the water as it moves through, and that is why they like the natural landscape of it. And then it improves function and performance, and it integrates into the site, supporting the function and performance. So the other comments that they make, and statements that they make in their manual, is that they want to create attractive landscape features that are visible within the site and also visible to others as an open space. So they ask you to creatively use vegetation that provides additional green space. So that's what we feel we're doing. Thank you.
Is that the last one?
I think they're, you got this one.
Yeah, that's the last one I've got.
Any questions for the applicants on this in particular?
I have questions, but not on the slide deck.
Okay. If there's nothing else on that relevant, on that topic, then we can move on to that. Good? Mark?
Good evening. I have a couple of questions about a letter that I received. And when I say your letter, can we agree that I'm referring to the letter of May 16th that was written by your attorney, I assume at your direction? Can we agree? So can I just call that letter your letter?
That's correct.
Okay. So one thing that I want to point out here is that in your letter, you wrote, quote, "The city appears to be seeking to shift the cost of improving the Maple Hill Road onto Chastec Farm to benefit the city's plans for the downtown core." Let me just start by saying I don't buy into your conspiracy theory, okay? I just don't. Especially since the city and this council is comprised of elected officials with term limits. You are asking for a planned unit development of PUD, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you'll agree with me that part of a PUD, or as part of a PUD, the city is permitted to and expects that there are benefits conferred to the public in exchange for what you have requested.
Are you asking if we agree? You said you will agree.
We don't agree that they are proportionate to.
Yeah, I didn't ask if it was
benefit.
proportionate. What I am saying is you'll agree that a PUD is a negotiation. You want something from the city, and in return, the city expects you to give the citizens, the residents of Corcoran, a benefit in return. Can we agree on that?
We can agree that there are PUD benefits, yes, that are required as a part of a PUD application and as a part of the approval. However, if
I'm
we
not-
were to go straight zoning with this plan,
Yeah.
we can't.
That's fine. I'm not done. So I'll hear from you in a second. I heard what you had to say. I have a few more questions, if that's okay. So, requiring that these kinds of improvements are within the city's powers as confirmed by statute, which I notably noticed your letter did not cite.
Here's the letter.
On that note, the case, excuse me? Oh, okay. On that note, you cited 4 cases in your letter. The first was Country Joe Inc. versus City of Eagan. What was that case about?
Let's clarify, we did not write the letter. We hired our attorney to write the letter.
But your
who
attorney
has-
is your representative, and I assume that you read the letter, and I
Yeah.
assume that you read the letter before you had it shipped to the city, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, I mean, is it fair to say you don't know what that case was about, right?
I've
That's
worked with
correct.
Country Joe, but I do not know what that particular case is about.
Okay. Is
I know
it fair to say you don't know what any of those 4 cases are?
No, it's not fair to say that.
Okay. Well, then, what
And I'm
is,
not- I-
what
I-
is,
no, I'm
can
not-
you tell me what Anderson versus City of Bemidji was about?
This
I
is,
think that's irrelevant. What we want to
Talk
talk
about
Well,
is
well,
the
hold on a
concept of
second.
reasonable
It's not
versus
irrelevant.
unreasonable.
It's not
let's
irrelevant.
talk in generality then about law, about lawsuits then, and excessive, let's just talk about what the issue is.
Well,
We
let me,
feel-
okay, this is my
Barb,
time.
let her
No, this is my time. Point of order. I'm not, I have additional comments.
Okay.
Okay, let me just say this. I reviewed all 4 of the cases. None of the cases had to do with PUDs. They had to do with taxes and charges for building permits and special assessments. None of the 4 cases had anything to do with PUDs. The second part of my response is that you are bringing this application, not the city. You have the choice to decide when to bring your application for consideration. You happen to choose a time before Maple Hill Road was in a condition to support your plans. So for that, I will also point out that another option is to simply withdraw your application until the road has been improved for some other reason or by some other party. The city isn't asking you to front money for this to be done after, for example, the downtown core is completed. It's not some advance on future work. We're asking for it to be done simultaneously with the development of the lot so that it can be adequately supported and safe for everyone. And, this question is for staff. Can you explain to me the reasons for the policy for roadway improvements to cover a property's entire frontage? And because my read of the packet is, well, this is our practice. Is there some other reason, or is it just, well, this is how we've always done it?
So it has been past practice. Staff has reevaluated that. Feel free to jump in, Kevin.
I can try to.
But my understanding is it is a little different than past practice in that it is a dead-end road. So anything north of their required accesses, arguably, there isn't a nexus. So staff is willing to concede that point, but they do need to provide improvements of Maple Hill Road up to whatever their northern access ends up being.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Beth, do you want to?
I just want to clarify. Please, thank you. I just want to clarify where we're coming from. And we feel that the off-site infrastructure that we're being asked via the feasibility study is excessive. And I would argue that there are cases that this is excessive for a 116-unit subdivision. We're being asked to improve the intersection, fully improve the intersection on Casa 10, provide 2 turn lanes, and we're also being asked to improve, as a connector, that part of Maple Hill that doesn't adjoin our property. So it's not adjacent to our property, so it's therefore off-site infrastructure. For whatever reason, MI Homes was able to develop and have an exit and egress onto Maple Hill and not provide any of that. So we do feel that it is excessive, and and I have been doing this a long time, land development, and it just, I've never experienced this kind of a requirement. So we really wanted to work with staff, and I think they have come to the table and sat down with us and considered some of these concerns of ours. And so I think that we together have been able to discuss options and still appropriately and maybe even, you know, as a pretty big PUD benefit, do some of these off-site improvements. It's just, we're not, here's the 116 units cannot absorb that kind of infrastructure cost. It just is, what happens is you deem this property undevelopable, and that is a legal issue. And so we just want it's an educational process. I can see how it comes to this point where the city says, well, this has to get done. You're going to be adding 116 lots to what is already over 200 units. So the existing road, nobody studied what the existing conditions need right now today. And is the existing situation and is the existing infrastructure actually sufficient for what's already there? I question that. So, and the condition in the staff report, or in the feasibility study, they do acknowledge Maple Hill Road is in poor condition. And there are 205 single-family homes that are driving on that today. And there's no turn lanes, ingress, egress on Maple Hill Road or on Casat 10. So it's just about being educated on this and in the situation and understanding where we're coming from and understanding where you're coming from. And I think we just need to do this very respectfully. And I appreciate your comments and I appreciate your perspective. I just want you to understand that we can't develop this property with those kind of infrastructure demands. And so that is kind of the bottom line. And we want to develop it, and we want to buy it, and we want to follow through with what we've committed to. And we think it's a really great project, and we have some difficult situations. We have difficult stormwater design issues, and I think we've stepped up on that. And I think it's going to be a lovely project. And I think it will, as rooftops, it will support your downtown. But to ask us to build that road to the extent that originally was asked was too much, and that's all I can say.
I think that staff said that what the ask is that you build the road to your entrance.
That's what our new conversation has been.
Okay.
So we've met and we've talked about it, and we've tried to come to some sort of a agreement that makes sense and that won't overburden that project. And I think
Say, that's one area where we do probably disagree with our attorney. I think we've said, well, let's be more collaborative. Let's provide a lot more improvements and, mill and overlay. So we are building a 30-foot road with a parking lane on it.
yeah,
Well, it's 60 feet, right?
11 feet.
But yeah, it's like
It's
1,200 feet
a
of
connector
roadway. Yeah.
road. So it's a pretty-
So the only part we're proposing to not build is the parking lane on the farm side, on the non-developed side, which there's no.
Yeah, I think Kevin can probably speak best to what's being proposed, or what you've said is the flexibility, potential flexibility.
Your attorney might be too expensive for the quality of his work.
Personal opinion.
I don't think that you need to take an attack on.
Well, we
attorney.
did get a letter
He's
from him,
Not here.
which attacked us.
He didn't
and-
attack you.
Well, let's not get too much into the
I
back
think-
and forth.
Like I said, we
He
didn't
was
bring him here.
factually incorrect on a bunch of stuff.
We didn't bring him here because we didn't want to get into, this kind of, that. Said, we're
Met with staff.
We're very open to going to a 30-foot road all the way to our entrance, which is what is legally allowed. That is the nexus of benefit for our project. We're also going to make that intersection safer. We will turn that road, right now it comes in at a Y. We're going to take that and make it perpendicular so that, have a better view corridor both left and right. So I think we're saving lives, potentially on that side. And then we're also adding a turn lane, which for some reason, once again, when MI went in, they should have put a turn lane in at Maple Hill, and they did not. And we're proposing to provide that coming from the east into the site. And, those alone are $250,000 per turn lane.
I do
So-
want to get back to a couple additional questions on that, but first I think I'd like to tackle some questions related to the itself.
Yeah.
I have a question for staff first. Regarding the flexibility that was requested on a couple of those lots, lot number 27, and I have it here somewhere.
87 and 28.
That sounds right, 87 and 28. Natalie, you had mentioned we've done that before on a cul-de-sac, but not necessarily on a
So
curve.
those two lots, they're asking for so the two lots that we just talked about are asking for a 20-foot rear setback. Everything else would have a 25-foot rear setback. So they're just asking for just some slight additional flexibility for them instead of asking for a 20-foot yard setback for the development overall. So it's a little different than the other request, which is to have 20 of the lots that are on curves, to have the lot width measured at the minimum required front setback. We do allow that for cul-de-sacs currently by right. We haven't allowed that on curves. But that could be a PUD flexibility concession, and it is 20 lots.
And it's just needed due to the spacing, or?
Yeah, and if you look at the lots, like they are large lots, it's just the curve makes it a bit harder for it to measure 55 feet at the lot line. But when you measure it at the front setback, it would meet the 55-foot wide requirement.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
We are bumping up against a density issue, and the reason I really wanted to come in with straight zoning on this, I didn't want to do a PUD, because I felt like we could do it. But we're bumping up against, the reason we had to do 55-foot lots or, and have some of these concessions is because we're at 3.45 units per acre now. We've lost lots. So your code says anywhere from 3 to 5 units per acre. So we're bumping up.
We've recently adopted a new level of residential that goes down to, is it 2 or 2.5?
Yes, but they're trying to do it with what their property's already guided. So we want to be careful about saying that they're required to re-guide their property. So.
Anyway, so that must be new.
Yeah, we're not trying to do anything crazy here. This is a pretty straightforward development. There's not a lot of, it's not a lot, it's not, there's lots of open space, lots of trails and sidewalks and connections.
And I'm glad it seems like we are more on the same page than I thought we were regarding the sidewalks aspect. The open space, I'm a little confused. I feel like I've seen between staff report, presentation, and discussion, seen or heard 12.2% open space, 15% open space, 13% open space.
Okay, so let me pull it up, yeah. So they are required 12% open space, and that is based on their pre-net acreage, or their net acreage, so it's not the gross acreage, it's taking out what we preliminarily know at this stage. So with that, they are required to have 4.03 acres to meet that 12% open space, but our code specifically says that it should be accessible. And so I think that's the area of interpretation. Are we saying that the view corridor is accessible? They have tried to incorporate view corridors so that it is an accessible view. You do, as the council, also have the ability to deviate somewhat from our straight 12% if we feel that there's constraints of the site that justify that deviation in addition to the public benefits being proposed. So,
Natalie, I have a quick question.
Yep.
The 4 point, so you didn't state what our percentage is at, you said it was.
yeah, so sorry, I'll get there. So then, they provided a document showing 4.659 acres of open space, but that included outlot G, which is primarily under the 100-year ordinary high water level. So deducting that, they're at 4.4783. So that is, let me do the percentage. I think it's about 13% divided by 33.58.
And that's without the hydraulic corridor.
It's without the hydraulic corridor, but it is including the space that is more of a view. But that's 13.3% open space with that current calculation. So they are meeting it as long as the city says that they are meeting it as long as the area that isn't going to be accessible, then that corridor is acceptable as a view spot.
Gotcha, thank you. And council,
This, not the hydraulic corridor, so the gray is our open space,
Correct.
right? So this is actually high and it's, could be used, so it could be park and, you know, it could be something usable if you wanted people to be able to access it and be a field or where people can play or, you know, I don't want to speak for a builder and say that a place, because I just don't know that that's going to be the demographic here. So, you know, maybe people are going to be walking and I don't know how they would use that, but it's usable.
Will the outlots be responsibility of the HOA
Yes.
to maintain in some well-kept fashion? Okay.
Can I ask staff a question?
yeah, absolutely.
Is it factual that this could not come in code?
We do know that it's very difficult to come in by right under our RSF2 standards. So with it currently zoned, no matter what, they were probably looking at some kind of rezoning. And so I haven't done the exercise. To their argument, they have a lot of stormwater they're taking on. So there are a lot of challenges to the site that it could very well be difficult, but I haven't done a plat myself to try to show that it can meet it. I do know that so far we've only had one property that has come in successfully on a by right plat for RSF3,
Yeah,
and they had to re-guide their property for 2 units an acre because they were about 2.3 units an acre.
yeah,
So it is difficult with our current zoning districts to come in at 3 so far. That has,
there's a difference between difficult and
Impossible.
impossible, right?
I don't like to say impossible. I don't like to say never. I haven't run the exercise myself.
Right.
We're trying to get a little bit tighter on, or higher expectations of what we see for developments. And so, I'll just wait till, can it be my turn to respond?
Yeah.
I feel like, when I think about PUDs and flexibility, and we somehow, we were told that a benefit to the city is we have more houses, which I don't see. Stormwater management system is something that would have to happen no matter what. Variety of home designs probably would happen no matter what. I do like that hydraulic corridor. I don't think we've had anything like that before. Like, I just don't seem, I'm kind of uninspired by the city's benefits for the PUD, and there is a standard in here that it would, or my assumptions that we'd get a better use than zoning if we allowed the PUD, and then generally the inflexibility on some of the, it sounds like we're working towards maybe a little bit more flexibility. So I'm just generally uninspired by the project.
Can I talk with you?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the largest PUD benefits would be improving that intersection and improving that roadway to the level that we're being asked to do it. And I think that's getting missed in this. So that's a very, very expensive endeavor for us. And so that benefits the rest of the community. It benefits adjacent property owners.
Yeah, isn't that something you didn't want to pay for?
No,
Isn't that what the letter said?
We didn't want to pay for the excessive, it was too much. It was millions of dollars that this property alone could not bear. So,
Like I said, we're not saying we're not gonna do any of it. We're saying
Yeah.
we wanna do measured portion includes.
Did you,
all of
I
them.
get it, guys, the tone of the letter is.
Let's talk about the letter for a second, if that's okay. Can I talk?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the person we hired, Jay Linderman, he is not a litigator, right? So this is not like a threat to sue, you know? He is, a lot of his time he spends representing cities. He represents the city of Edina on redevelopment projects. He represents Wayzata. He's worked for the Met Council as their general administrative officer. He was the general counsel on US Bank Stadium on the light rail.
Sure.
And so he has a lot of experience working on the public side, and so his reputation in the city attorney community, as you might call it, is stellar and well-respected and collaborative. And so, Mr. Landry might disagree from the letter, but I'm just saying, like,
That's his reputation, and so that's really what we.
That's fair enough.
And so we're not.
We can only, we have one interaction with him.
Yeah.
But, it really doesn't, it doesn't matter. That was the first thing that I heard was a letter about that you didn't want to pay for that stuff. But I just am really sick of the 3-car garages and giving a pass on. I know everybody likes them. I think they look, since I know in a code we don't get to, our opinion doesn't matter. But I'm just sick of the same old dopey, same old, and this looks a lot like same old, and in PUDs, we get to give our opinion, and I think we already have other projects that look just like this. So that's why, you know, I'm not too keen on giving PUD flexibility here. But I'm only one vote.
Anything else you want to add?
No.
Dean or John? Or Jeremy?
If I can, what are we getting on Maple Hill Road? What has been agreed to? And I'm trying to put that paperwork aside and everything else, if Kevin can jump in. And then another question, Kevin, while you're forming all of that, if you put the map back up, the hydraulic corridor, if that weren't in place, how much infrastructure is needed to handle that water and the cost of that instead of just putting it in a hydraulic corridor, if you can answer that question?
I'll try to do that now. Steve's here also, who's a little more.
I
into the project, so if I'm
saw
saying
the
something wrong,
expertise sitting against the wall, so I
You can correct
appreciate
me if
that.
I'm wrong, but I'll try to simplify it as I vision what's going on. And I might actually have to back up a little bit to maybe clarify this whole conversation, to kind of Councilmember Lanterman's initial question about the statement or the verbiage in the feasibility study that says generally it's policy to go from the full right of way. That's because that policy, we haven't had a development where 98% of the traffic will go south. So in that specific, in most cases, there is some spread and some usage of both directions. So we're not designing the road. There's other considerations like how do you tie in grades, how do you manage drainage. So we try to give them the best extents possible so that an early point in the stage they can develop as best case pro forma. There's been nothing done in terms of design on this road, in terms of refining of the design. We've worked with them more than any other developer to kind of help them predict that at this stage in the process, because it is important to them, because they have asked the question. So we're doing a lot to help them evaluate what they're getting into as they keep proceeding. So I just wanted to kind of set that table. We also have to look at this development as if nothing else is happening around it, right? This is the plan they put in front of us. This is the situation we have. There are a lot of moving pieces, especially in this part of Corcoran. So we have to react to the plans that are in front of us and the situation that's in front of us. If everything else falls apart, the private cul-de-sac on the north end serves that emergency access connection. If everything fell around it and this project had to go forward, more than likely the improvements the recommendation would be they have to go all the way north, right? In terms to meet the nexus, in terms of meeting what we're what we should accomplish when we look at the development impacts. Now, if they are to work out something with the neighbor to the east between what we have in front of us today and when they come in and sign the final contract, that is certainly something we've talked to them about, saying is if you find another solution, your traffic then primarily goes south, so that's something that we can consider reseeding. That is not in the documents here. We have talked with staff about that, or we've talked with the applicant about that. We can't make that recommendation until we know there's a second access, whether it's the development to the east moves forward and we have surety to make sure that road gets built. That would be one way to do it, or they can work with them and acquire a different solution that would then potentially minimize their cost. That's fully in their control, in my opinion. So we work with them on that. We've talked to them about now the vision of the collector or the connector road. So one of the things when a property comes in, we look at the planning documents. The Southeast District planning documents show Maple Road as a connector. There's a detail in our code, correct me if I'm wrong, that identifies that road. That road in that detail is it's basically an urban section. It shows, I believe, sidewalk on both sides, 8-foot parking and 11-foot lanes. So early on we presented that because we asked what is the connector road, help us define it. That's what we had. We've since worked with them to dial that in. The most current anticipated design would be to basically peel off the western boulevard improvements on that detail and that turn lane, because the road's about 30 feet wide now approximately, and if you do 11, 11, and 8, that gets you to 30 feet. Their traffic is using both sides of the road to access the site. So, and I think it lays out well. I mean, we're not asking them to do anything on the west side on anyone else's property. We're just asking them to get to the through lanes. Now, I think in their comments, they're saying they would like to keep that rural on the west side. If it works out to be rural when we go to the design, that hasn't been decided at this point, whether it's rural or curb on that side. That's a detail that, per our development contracts, is an actual cost paid by the developer. When we get into that design, we can refine that and bring that back. In the limited review that we've done, it looks like we can set ourselves up well and still maintain the existing road condition. So whether it falls off to a ditch or whether they do a curb, I think that's to be determined. I can make the argument in some cases you might not need easement from an adjacent property owner if you tighten it up at the curb, or you might not have to relocate small utilities. So that, I don't know if it's cheaper which route to go. I don't know that it matters. We would work with them on what works for the roadway, what works for the drainage, and what minimizes cost. So again, these are all details that are never worked out at this point. We're doing our best to give them some guidance and projections on cost. We don't control when they're going to come in with the final plat. Prices could change in 9 months. So we do our best to educate them on here's the design that we're looking at. So that's a little bit of context of what it would look like. So what it would look like is curb and gutter likely on the east side, some segment of sidewalk, and that's a little bit up for discussion depending on what happens between tonight or sooner when they come back in. But I envision a 2-lane, 11-foot lanes north and south with an 8-foot turn lane on the east side with curb and gutter. Some conversation about the connection of the sidewalk, and then obviously on the western edge, it could be ditch, it could be curb, whatever is most feasible, we would work with them on, whatever works. So that's the vision. We have our engineering team use best practices. It's all outlined in the feasibility study. We believe that what we're asking for is important for this development, and with that I'll kind of pause and if you got any other questions.
Just real quick, Mr. Mayor, on the hydraulic, what's it called?
Yep. Yes.
Green, whatever we're calling it. If that wasn't there, no, excuse me, the rest of the details in the stormwater management and everything else on the streets and stuff, standard curb, gutter, drains, and that water's draining into the ponds on site.
So generally speaking, the new ponds that they're making, correct me if I'm wrong, support their impervious from their site. A
Okay.
lot of the pass-through stuff is what you're gonna see in this hydraulic corridor. Now, they mesh together a little bit because the ponds go into that, so it's a little bit blurry. It's not simple to say this
All right.
stormwater, that stormwater. It's all part of the system. There is a lot of pass-through in the system. That's just the responsibility of the property to some degree too, but it is maybe more, you know, in terms of considering it for a PUD, there is a lot of.
It's passing
Pass-through.
through over to the western, or
Yeah,
the
and they're
eastern.
responsible to take drainage, pass drainage, you can do what you want on your site.
Okay.
You could do other ways to get it through there, you could pipe it through there, you know, that there's pros and cons to each, so they're, and I don't know if this is a final design either, we haven't
Okay.
final designed it, but,
Okay.
I mean, Steve might be like, they're close to accomplishing some of their goals, at least internally, I believe, at a high level. There's some detail, there's a lot of conditions in there in the stormwater memo, but, I mean, they're basically using, in my opinion, they're using that hydraulic corridor to pass through the existing water primarily. And it will bounce, it will be really dry when there's no
Yep.
rain, so it'll be like a grass area, and then when it rains, it will spike. So there's a fair amount of bounce in that corridor, so I just want you guys to have the vision of what it looks like. It will bounce, it's almost like a dry swale, so that's what they need to do to help mitigate their, you know, permitting requirements, but that's the visual, it will bounce and then dry back down.
Kevin, can I just ask a question?
I'd rather keep going if I could, please. The M&I homes in the property, why would there not have been a turn lane added? And why would there not have been an improvement from that road that jumps onto Maple Hill, at least to the
I
intersection?
think that was before, that got approved before I was at the city, but they did
I'm
make,
sure.
the fur lane turn lanes that you see, at the fur lane connection to
Yep.
10 were part of that project.
And that was enough for,
That, yeah, I'd have
Fur
to,
lane
I'd have to
and-
review that feasibility study, and that was, I believe, a PUD as well, so I don't know the details of
that's
that.
all right. I just didn't know if we dug deep or anything into that, so.
No, I mean,
Again, what
we
we're-
literally try to look at the site and each site individually
Yep.
with what we can control.
So really, Mr. Mayor, we're talking of the rezoning and a preliminary
Councilmember
plat
Steve has something
approval.
to add.
Oh, please.
Can I just add one, as Kevin was talking about the roadway improvements, one thing I don't want to miss is a feasibility study. It also recommended on County Road 10, both right and left turn lanes.
Yep.
Just from getting, it's a safety improvement to get people out of the county road safely onto the road. So just wanted to highlight that as well, just so it wasn't missed.
Yeah. Thanks.
And Beth, did you have something you'd like to follow up on?
Yeah, thanks. And Kevin and Steve, maybe you can help me with this, but I do believe that we've also solved some drainage issues onto the Maple Hill Estates. I think we're able to capture so much problem. There's some flooding there that's, of course, coming across this site currently that we're hoping to resolve with this system, and that's the plan, so that they don't have any more problems over there.
I would just for the public knowledge, we can never really resolve stormwater problems, we can only improve them.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
I don't want to set the standard that there isn't going to be a problem, but
Yeah, I believe that's why they included the stormwater management design as PUDs, because there was an attempt to try to improve what's happening in Maple Hill, because that was during the neighborhood meeting. Barry, the owner of Maple Hill Estates, did speak with me about concerns of an existing condition, and the applicant tried to solve for that as part of the PUD negotiation, or again, at least improve it.
Jeremy, did you have anything? I saw you typing away or looking stuff
So
up.
my biggest concern with this one is how the open space is scattered across the whole site rather than consolidated into one area. And I know this was in process when we made the policy. We're not applying policy requirements to this project. In future, I would have much preferred to see outlot F and E area centralized into the corridor and try to really make that a more broad green corridor that's more usable. I understand the site is constrained and there's limits to what we can ask for, given the timing of the project. But I would hope in future that we wouldn't see this number of outlots spread out as much as they're spread. I'd rather see those open spaces consolidated and more usable. I feel like the safety improvement to the intersection with County Road 10 is the major public benefit. The open space, I think, is important as well, but I feel like it's compromised by the site design. But I do see considerable value in the improvement in that intersection, adding the turn lanes. I know I've struggled when I've visited Maple Hill Estates a few times. It is a challenging place to get in and out, especially if it's busy. So having those turn lanes in place, I think, is a significant benefit to all residents.
You're talking about the turn lanes from 10 onto?
Yes.
Yeah, and I guess that's one area I would ask the applicants. I know you mentioned a turn lane that you're talking about. It seems like that's where there still is a significant gap between what feasibility study is saying and what you're saying. Is that accurate?
If you find that to be an important PUD benefit.
It's a negotiation, so.
Yeah, I think that's probably what to say. Obviously, we prefer not to spend, to fully approve that, but I think I understand what you're saying.
To me, it's a safety issue, and
It's currently a safety issue, too.
yeah.
And getting rid of it is the benefit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Any other topics on the PUD itself that you guys would like to go over? There's the, kind of covered some of the setback items as 25, if this were to be voted for approval. 25 is the appropriate setback for the rear
Oh, for
yard?
the buffer yard, yeah.
Yeah.
We did approve that for Fairway Shores.
Yep.
We did find that acceptable to apply the same setback as the surrounding PUD.
Question, Councilmember Bottom, real quick.
Me?
You brought up the comment about the garages,
Yeah,
three stall garages and stuff. You'd rather see a combination of threes, twos and such?
No,
Or
it's-
what are you talking about?
everybody asks for 60% garage frontage instead of 55. And it's always the same argument about
Yeah.
you can't fit. And then, I just think that either we have the standard or we don't. If you want to
Yeah.
if you want 7 cars,
Okay.
then you need to go live in a neighborhood that has bigger houses
By
or
an
something.
appropriate,
Yeah,
okay. That just stuck. Thank you for clarifying, very much.
So to clarify, you would like, if it were to be voted for approval, to just keep it at 55?
yeah. I mean, it's just a general statement.
Yep.
So many of them asked for the garage to be most of the house front, and it just,
It keeps looking like
We have
stuff we already have.
we get to have opinions about, we don't get to have opinions when it's a straight zoning. In a PUD, we get to have opinions. And I just don't think that 3-car garages that occupy the front of your house, they might be appropriate some places, but not for Corcoran.
Makes sense.
The other way around it is having a wider home design on a wider lot.
That's true. There are ways around it.
Fencing item that Natalie had mentioned earlier, I think was in the presentation as well. It's constantly in that regarding applicants' proposed fence versus staff's recommendation about the landscaping. Do we have any thoughts on that?
I had asked for that before I knew staff was asking for it to move to the back. So, yeah, I think it should be at the property line versus hugging the contours of the homes. It should encapsulate the trail and not separate the trail from the neighborhood.
One point of clarification in the PUD resolution is I just said fence, and I think the verbiage should change to fence and berm should be moved as far north to the boundary as possible. Because the the fact that they had asked for a berm for some reason. I knew about it at the beginning of the staff report, but by the end of it, I'd forgotten that there was a berm. So I would just say that the current PUD resolution, there would just need to be a slight change in that verbiage.
Okay, do you know where that actually is in the resolution?
Paragraph 12. A fence on the north property line of Outlot A is allowed but must be placed as close to the northern property line as possible. So I would just change that to a fence and berm on the north property line of Outlot A is allowed but must be placed as close to the northern property line as possible.
I'll make that motion. For that motion.
Wait, do we have a second on that?
Second.
Any discussion?
Can I just make one? I think it's probably covered in the report, but that's all D&U easement. We have sewer there, so we would need an encroachment agreement. So it's probably covered in our general notes, but just for clarity purposes, can we add the language that would require an encroachment agreement?
Yep, I can.
Friendly.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll just,
So,
12A,
motion be with that.
an encroachment agreement for these improvements will be required.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
So it's 3, John?
Clarify what we're voting on.
It was the fencing, and I think the term in the resolution, I think it's paragraph 12, where the fencing / berming would be along the property line or along the.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of when we have different zoning, if we have fences in between zoning in any other place in the town.
We do allow fences up to the property line. In most, or in every district, sometimes it's the front property line. There's typically limitations on the height, but we do allow fences up to the property line.
We
And
do,
our buffer ordinance does allow for.
that's what I'm
fences,
asking,
too.
I don't care if a private person does
Yeah,
it, but
yeah,
the buffer
ordinance.
allows a fence.
Yep, as one of the ways to meet the buffer ordinance.
And
And they're trying to buffer themselves from Maple Hill Estates.
I understand that. I just want to make sure that it fits within the buffer or buffer more than my own personal preference. But so long as it meets the buffer ordinance, I think that's fine. So I'll vote yes,
So it's,
since you asked.
thank you. So that's 401, Landerman abstained.
Okay. And then also, based on the conversation so far, paragraph 4 of the PUD resolution, I would recommend adding 2 clauses. It starts out saying the applicant shall comply with all requirements of the city engineer's memo for, oh, no, that's not the right one. I'm sorry, it was supposed to be the feasibility study. I'm sorry, paragraph 5. The applicant shall comply with all requirements of the infrastructure feasibility study. And then adding paragraph A, the applicant shall improve Maple Hill Road up to and through the most northern access into the development, including any emergency access. And paragraph B, final design of the road improvements to be approved by the city engineer. And that provides us with some flexibility to continue those discussions.
Okay. And what, can you clarify what paragraph that is?
Paragraph 5.
5. Give me 1 second, I'd like to take a look at that.
So that would mean if Bergeron goes through and they get their second access to the southeast,
You would just go
The-
it would just go to the main
The
entrance.
first
Yes,
one.
there is a condition in there too that
Paragraph
says they must have 2 accesses, but again, we're trying to provide that flexibility with the assumption that Bergeron could go through on a similar timeline, or they could get an easement working with that property owner.
Correct, yes, there's
You're
multiple
actually,
ways they can achieve that if they want
Plain
to.
text
That's-
D, yep, that one. No. Let's see here. What's the resolution number on that, Natalie?
So this one is resolution 2024-73, and that was paragraph 5. Just saying that they must comply with the infrastructure feasibility study.
Okay,
And we're
just
just adding
expanding
a
that.
couple of caveats.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Did you have something you'd like to say?
I would just like to address Councilor Donovan's comments about the garages.
Yeah.
We're finding that all of our interested parties, builders, really need that third car garage. There's a demand in the market, but that's living there or it's a family living there. So there's a strong demand for that, and I would ask you, I don't even know the answer to this, I'm truly asking you, did you, because Fairway Shores adjacent has 55-foot and 65-foot lots, so very similar to ours. Did they ask for the variance on the garage?
They did, they tailored it to specific lots, so it didn't reach a certain percentage. And then another application we recently reviewed, we granted some flexibility, but it was required to have a second floor to offset it. So that could be part of this discussion too, are we open to 60% as long as there's a second floor to take away some of that effect?
Or there's a percentage?
Or there's a certain percentage of
Yeah.
lots that
I mean,
could
I
have
think
that
would help
deviation.
us, because I think it really hinges, it impedes.
Remember, Beth, we don't have to design our town for the interests of the builders, right? So we're running into capacity as a town, and one of the biggest things people don't want us to do is turn into Maple Grove, which is sort of like what we're doing.
But I've heard you say that, and I understand that, and here's my thought on that, and my response to it, is that I don't think it's the builders decide. I think it's the market.
Fair enough.
Really.
Then we don't need as many houses in Corcoran if they have to be all looking the same. We can make that decision as a council.
You can, absolutely, I guess.
So we could have our population go from 5,000 to 30,000 in 5 years and have all the houses look the same and the builders are happy. And maybe a bunch of people live
Do I
here.
agree with the way all the houses look? Do I think
That's
the
what I'm
houses
saying,
look
like, we-
I can't do anything about that.
We can't
but
always,
People tend to buy them and say, I want that house.
yes.
I like that house, I want that house, because they don't
They can go to
know how to
Rogers.
design them.
They can go to Rogers or Otsego or somewhere else
Yeah.
where they can have 4-stall garages in the front yard.
Yeah.
That's,
And here's the other thing, we would have made more 65-foot lots, right?
yeah,
But we have a density issue.
yes.
So.
We actually
and
are
then
working,
then
we're
it's a
working on that.
numbers issue and a value. I know, but we are bumping up against that. And so I ask you please to reconsider that on us, or give us at least a percentage, as you've treated other people, in the community.
You could talk to Natalie of how we worked around that, I guess. She just gave you some
Well,
ideas.
I think it's more about what would make a difference for your vote with it.
Yeah, I know, I mean,
So-
yeah, I hear you.
What about, I know in the past we've seen some requirements around the quality of the door and architectural features on it in combination with the second story. Maybe it doesn't look like it's just a,
Make it look like a
Toothy
wall
smile.
instead of a door.
I have seen that.
I have seen it too, yeah, where all of a sudden the wall opens up and it's a garage door. Does that make you happy?
Yeah, those are pretty cool.
Yeah,
You
bet.
can't tell. Yeah. I do not, that's, when I talk about,
We're getting late, so we're getting a
Yeah.
little silly, but that's okay.
And we are trying to, we are designing this, with all due respect, we are designing it according to the guide plan. So I'm not, and this is a section of Corcoran that is.
but it's a PUD now. So what I would like to get clarification from staff about, is if we absolutely are hamstringing you with, if there's no way it could be done by code, then I can understand your problem. But if there's a way to be done by code, then it's a different, then it's a different way I have to look at it.
So
So,
if you were to do, just think about this, it's not very difficult. Is it 80-foot lots? Is your code? I can't do 80-foot lots and get.
I don't want to, we could table this, and maybe we do it a different time. Because I'm stuck on this.
So if we do table it, it would be really helpful to understand, what it is, like, besides the exercise of doing a by right plat
If
for
you have-
ours up to, what other items could get us to a yes? What items need to get addressed?
You only need 4,
Yeah.
so all you need is 4 other people besides me to vote yes on this. That's the solution.
So I guess the question is there a way to get to a yes with the remaining votes, or is it a 3-2 vote, and do we need to table it for that?
So that is the question.
Does the turn lane conversation matter for the other?
I believe right now, the way we have it worded, if it meets the approval for a PUD, and then they are required to meet the feasibility report findings, except for the concessions we
We
called
actually
out
did
in the
not
ordinance.
make the amendment yet to,
Right, so with the amendments that I provided, provide some flexibility to continue some of those conversations, but the turn lanes would still be required. And if it meets the other standards of the PUD, then those turn lanes are required. It's just as simple as that, because we have feasibility that supports that is needed for that intersection to operate properly with the added homes. Safely. So the question is, are there additional PUD benefits that would strengthen the application, or are there some flexibilities we're not willing to concede? Is there a way to get to a yes? Because if there is, then we can certainly table it. If the answer is no, then I don't think we need to continue the conversation.
I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion to amend that paragraph 5, just so we don't, as Natalie had laid out, so we don't forget to do that, whether or not, and then we'll get to the next question on.
I'll second that.
And that was related, that was what?
Natalie, could you restate it?
It's the feasibility study, so it's paragraph 5, the applicant shall comply with all requirements of the infrastructure feasibility study dated December 2023. Adding subparagraph A, the applicant shall improve Maple Hill Road up to and through the most northern access into the development, including any emergency access. Subparagraph B, final design of the road improvements to be approved by the city engineer.
We had a
I'd second that. That's-
So does that include the turn lanes on?
That includes that they would
Includes the
still
turn
be used
lanes.
to do the turn lanes.
Yep.
second. Close the discussion. Anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
401. Same as the other one. Okay, then kind of to Natalie's point, where do we think we are overall? Is there other aspects of it that need to be discussed, that anyone would like to discuss? Where are we leaning? This does require a 4/5 majority. So,
I feel like the safety benefit is enough for me, even though I don't love the open space plan. I feel like it checks the boxes I need to have checked.
okay.
Well, we can vote on 5B for the publication. I'll make a motion that we,
Well,
Well, we don't need to do that, though. I mean, the public, if we haven't approved the ordinance, then there's no need to do the publication.
oh, I'm sorry, I jumped the gun on that.
no worries.
I appreciate it, but
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
While I have some reservations and stuff, I'm grossly aware this is a challenging parcel. I'd like to stop hearing that going forward. The drainage and all of the hardships and stuff, I don't need that reviewed every time we sit down and talk. Going forward, I'd like it to be more straightforward and deal with our administration and stuff and resolve these issues as much as possible instead of coming to us. We don't need to hear the challenges of. When I first came here, I experienced Cook Lake Highlands and the changes and all of the things we jumped on to help make that all go through, and it's still a pretty huge empty spot. We were told the same kind of thing tonight. That's what the market's driving. Well, the market drove a co-op and then it drove a 55 and older community. Then I don't want to hear those changes anymore. Here's a plan, this is the direction we're going, and move on. I don't want to hear about any more hardships or anything else. The PUD would be written and it would be done. So that's where I'm at.
Gotcha.
I'm a no across the board.
Okay. So we have the option of, I'm trying to read exactly where that lands you, Dean, on,
More up than down
okay.
if we've got more discussion.
And John, you're kind of on, there's some aspects you definitely did not like.
If I was voting tonight, I would vote no.
Okay. That's important to know. So we have the
But
option.
I don't know how I get to a yes.
Fair enough.
There's no like land, like you're asking, how do I get there? I don't know.
So, really the discussion at this point is, do we think that there's value in tabling to a 11th or 25th gets really close up against the deadline? I'd be a little nervous about that.
Yeah, I would recommend July 11th.
Is there value in tabling to the 11th, or if the votes aren't there and we don't think that they will be there with whatever's thought of or potentially added at the 11th?
Can I throw an idea out?
Sure.
Can you put the map back up, please? So I echo John's sentiment about trying to find ways to be better than our more developed neighbors. And I don't know if this is practical or not, but I'll throw it out as an idea. If it were possible to broaden the green corridor in the center and make it more usable space, maybe with a trail through it, maybe we reduce and consolidate some of the other outlots to make that possible. So now you've got a neighborhood that's a little bit like a miniature Wild Meadows, potentially. Would you see that as a PUD benefit sufficient to match the flexibility they're asking for?
Talking to me
Yeah.
about if we made it bigger in the middle?
Yeah.
I think it's worth thinking of, I mean, I don't know. It's worth thinking about and tabling, I guess, until the 11th, but
So how would you do that, Jeremy? You would move the 60-foot buffer inside and the house is closer to Maple Hill? What are your thoughts?
There's probably several ways. I don't want to negotiate on somebody else's behalf, if that's possible.
Go ahead.
Can I propose another idea? We've thought about maybe we take out these 5 lots at the north. There's a lot of roadway being constructed for that anyways. We can probably pick up 1 lot, basically where that street sits. We'll work with the neighbors to get, our emergency access points. And then this could be, some sort of amenity like pickleball or,
My concern with that would be if that density and if that's also
we don't-
dependent on that.
there is not, that density requirement is not.
If you're 3.4, I think you could lose 5.
Let me do the math of the pre-development, because sometimes the pre-development too is the lower one that we see. We do see it go up a little bit usually.
When you take the unbuildable and the wetlands out,
The wetland buffers is like the big one, when you take
Yeah.
the wetland buffers out, because we're already taking out wetlands. So here, let me just pull up density.
And again, that would
So
end
it's
up
5
being,
lots, or you would get 1 lot,
5
so
lots.
4 we could.
get maybe 1 back, maybe.
Okay,
So 4 lots.
4.
but that would
Does
not
that
be
address your
a
concern,
city responsible type deal. That would be a homeowners association.
That's still the HOA,
type
yeah.
deal. Yep.
Does that address your concern that you're talking about though?
I'd like to see usable open space, maybe not pickleball, maybe, yeah, it's noisy for all the people who,
Dog run or something,
yeah. Dog park.
open. Mhm. Yeah, or open, just place
Neighborhood
to play.
orchard, yeah.
Or,
Yeah,
yeah.
gardens, I don't know, neighborhood gardens.
I think it does lower I think you'd still be above 3 for the pre-estimate. So it was about 3.3 if you were to just lose those 4 lots, if that would be something seen as an advantage.
Well, they would still fit, so.
yeah. I'm just saying in a PUD, it's not factual that in a PUD situation, they have to be between 3 and 5. They can drop lower.
Well, but you're basically mandating a comprehensive plan amendment, and so they're working within what we've,
Even
what
with,
our,
even with a PUD?
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So I would say they do want to hit 3 if they want to avoid a comp plan amendment, which is a significant process and cost.
Yeah, I get it.
So then, basically, what I'm hearing is if they were to, if there could maybe, they're hoping that we can at least give them maybe some percentage of 3-car garages, but if maybe there could be some compromise there.
What was the percentage we gave to?
I think we approved about 10 lots, I'd have to look it up.
But percentage-wise, just because they have only 70.
Yeah, like that, so if we gave,
Yeah.
so if we gave them like 10%, lots could have 3-car garages. that have a 60% maximum. And we could also require a second level on those lots so that, potentially, so that we're offsetting that requirement. And then if they were to give the additional open space, would that get us closer to a yes? We can certainly table it to work through some of the logistics, but we just need some direction on how to strengthen the application for that to be worthwhile.
I think if there's, the thought is that it might shift some people, that maybe we should
I'd like more clarity like that.
Yeah,
There'd
that we
be
should-
more.
table it, because I think there's a couple things that would need to be figured
It'd
out.
be very specific, just debating on, I wish we could have a little go at preliminary application type process where we throw ideas out and, oh yeah, that one makes sense, but we're up against the final here.
It is, they did come forward with a concept plan, and they did actually take a lot of that feedback in place. Originally, they were coming in with lots about 44 feet wide or as small as that.
Yeah.
I heard you say 55, they got it to 55.
Yeah.
They did ask for, I believe, garage flexibility as part of that concept plan, and there wasn't a hesitation at that point. It's fair that we're seeing it a lot, we want to put
Yeah, I
some
don't think I was,
restrictions on that.
I'm pretty sure on the front end, I was not that enthusiastic.
And that's very possible. I don't remember exactly what you said on it, but I don't, usually when I hear like a hard no, that's what gets communicated as the application moves forward.
What we could do is, I suppose, I think that would get me closer, honestly.
Okay.
But I don't know, Mark is here too, we have to have four, we still have to four. Dean's doesn't know either.
And I would
And I don't
say-
wanna put a bunch of work into it, for
Right.
you guys.
Well, there's gonna be a bunch, if they have to start over from scratch, there's gonna be a lot of work anyways. So I would say, if we don't wanna put a lot of work in it, what can we do to strengthen this plan? That will be drastically less work than starting over with a completely different development.
Yes. There has to, I mean, one of the things that we like is things that are different, I guess, and unique. And like, I kinda like your system about, the getting bonus points for being unique. And they're just, the uniqueness is that peer through hydro open corridor area. I don't know why that seems interesting, but it is, so good job on that. So we just need something else to make it not look like all the other ones. We have to have these not look like all the other ones.
So I would recommend we table it to the July 11th meeting with the direction to staff to work with the applicant on at least the two things that were discussed, the potential of rearranging some of those northwest corner lots or removing them.
We do run into the problem of if we approve something where they have to put turn lanes in and they're not if they're just flat out not gonna do that, then we don't have to table it to the 11th. They could let us know that that's a no-go for them, and then we could.
Well, I think that was the language we put in there.
Yeah,
that-
I think at this stage, if we believe it meets the standards, or if there's some changes we can make to make it the standards, we require the road improvements, and then that's their decision whether or not they want to move forward.
Sure.
And that would be reviewed at, between preliminary and final plat.
Yeah, I get it. Okay.
All right, so I'm hearing work with the applicant on identifying a more constrained garage limit.
Yep.
Work on potentially adding some uniqueness and open space in that northwest corner.
Or, well, potentially with the
And
green
potentially
corridor,
within that
opening that up,
corridor.
or the applicant's suggestion of the
Okay.
potential.
And then bring that back July 11th for further discussion.
They could put a silo in there.
What about a
Never
gazebo
hurts.
that's silo-esque?
Yeah.
Agri-hood right there in the
There you
center.
go.
Or a community garden, the agri-hood idea.
Yeah, all you need is a silo.
And you'll get his vote, most likely.
I tried to put a silo in the house.
We,
Said no.
that was
Don't wanna.
I did not say no to that.
Don't wanna bury something and stuff. Mark, is there a way to rescind that letter, erase that, null and void it to us, or anything to change any of your thoughts or mindset? Just asking.
No.
Okay.
I will make the motion to table it to that, with that direction, to the July 11th meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
401. Thank you. Okay, and then we will move on. We have no unfinished business. We will go to new business. We technically have a public comment opportunity if anyone would like to speak on 10A, which is 2025 budget goals and priorities. This is the first discussion, first crack, big picture stuff of that. I don't think I've seen anyone, so we'll go into 10A.
So, Mayor and Council, what staff is asking for with this report is some feedback in order for us to do our due diligence in preparation for the 2025 budget. And so, in my time here, the first point, it's my understanding that historically, Council has established the budget with a baseline starting from the previous year, adding any increase in tax capacity, plus the rate of inflation. And so one of the first things we're asking.
No, that's not true. Population increase plus inflation, not increase in tax capacity.
Yeah, the goal is we want to use less of our tax capacity over time.
And that's why we're having this conversation.
Like I said,
Exactly.
first crack.
Is this your first budget you've done with us?
Yeah, I've only been here 6
Yeah,
months.
we hired him in December.
2024 is
I know,
one
it
of
just
those
seems
dog
like-
years. Feels like
It does feel like I've been here 6 years, I agree.
It's not his first dealing with our budget. It's his first setting.
So that's why I'm seeking clarification. So with that, I presume that's the direction that you want to continue to go. And it's important to note that population is actually increased above projections, so we got the 2023 numbers. And I think the number projected was 505, and we were closer, just shy of 600, I think is where we landed. So that's just important to note.
I think we're about total population.
8,643, roughly.
Unless you know a better way to do what we're wanting to do.
So I think that's a longer discussion.
Yep.
I think as far as best practice, we're gonna have to think about a different way to do it, or at least have dialogue about that, because we have some services that are coming online and some future requirements that we're gonna have to make some hard choices, because I'm not sure that this calculus is gonna be able to deliver the expectations that the community has in, so that's a future discussion, but for 2025, we do need to move forward because we're in the season of it. So that calculus is something that council would like to continue, I believe, as a
So that would put
consensus.
us, what, at ballpark 11% increase between inflation and population?
Depends what numbers you're using.
Yeah, it depends on the numbers. So we're gonna come back and have those conversations, and we'll narrow that down. I don't want to, it would be conjecture right now for me to throw something out.
I think, Jay, just, may I speak?
Yeah,
To
of course.
budget concerns? It's gonna be hard. We understand that. And I'll just say this, because it's worth saying, but, we always have to represent the taxpayer and make sure they're getting a good shake on this. And but be understanding of that. People expect us to do our jobs. And we love the work the people from the city does. So our budget is a reflection of what we have to hold as our responsibility to taxpayers and also get good services. We're in this together. The priority, I think we've said previously, is that people matter first. And then I think it goes stuff than services. I don't know what the order after people is, but I'd rather keep good people than have us buy a new dump truck, or than have us get a canine, or have us, whatever. I don't know how we do thread that needle, but we've always said that we understand that your job is challenging and really, really tough. And people in our town watch our budget, and we gotta do the best we can to get it working, but we wanna be good to the people that work here.
So I will say that's heartening, because that gets to the second point, is in terms of priorities, the deliverable priorities. I'm happy to hear you say people first, because I've worked in organizations where when you're having budget cuts, that's not always the decision point. And so we work really hard to get the right people on the bus, and we want to ensure that we keep them on the bus.
And that even applies to Packer fans.
Yes.
I
I received that.
You look down there, but I know you have a Packer magnet in your
I
office.
received
We might change him up to a minivan and take the bus away. And I had said this last budget cycle, the next 2 times are gonna be extremely difficult until we start seeing this. And what John just said, the people are first. The people that are doing the job are first, and we've gotta figure out everything after that. But I still find it very hard that we're gonna be able to hold the line tight without 1 or 2%.
I don't know how we slow the roll on this stuff.
Yeah.
Like you guys have so much stuff on your plate all the time. And I don't know who I talked to, but I said, I wish there was a way to like stop everything until we catch up. I don't know if there's a way to do it. I'd be totally open to saying, our city is way behind on, we're buried.
Yeah.
And we just can't hire 12 people, and it's hard to hire 2. Is there anything we can, as city council, do to say our people are underwater? How can we help that with,
I don't know that there's a broad, like, perfect answer to stop, to kind of hit the pause button, which would be nice, but I know we are, with Alicia coming on board, and we have a couple jobs that are coming out, or that are in the process of being hired or going out soon.
We're not overwhelmed, Alicia, we're just, there's lots of
I know,
things.
but her example of having
I'm just
someone
teasing.
in there that can help the workload on.
Yeah, I don't know,
staff in
it's
general,
hard.
and-
So if I can speak to that with a couple things. One, I want to say that I think council has done a good job just doing that. So in my first week here, I made a hard ask for, an audacious ask for a lot of money to solve a complex problem. And I just told you earlier this evening that we didn't solve it to the degree that I wanted to, but also if we look at it, we've accomplished some remarkable results
Yes.
in a relatively short timeline. The team is incredible. So one of the things I want to say about that is if it didn't have this pace, some of our teammates might not be here because they'd be bored. I say that in all truthfulness. Like, part of what brings this unique team together is the fact that this is a very hard job. Not everybody can do it, and they can take a lot of pride in the fact that they can step up to the plate and knock it out of the park week after week. But also, I want to follow that up with, we don't want to burn them out. And so in the pace that we keep, it's important for us to create the space. So like when council approved the recruitment and retention plan, some really cool things have been used for that. Everything from fish finders to e-bikes to saunas. If that's what it takes to make somebody find the space to take care of themselves a little bit better, maybe it's a trip to Disney World, however they're using that. But it's also kind of cool to point out that as I'm connecting with my peers, nobody else is doing that, and they're talking about the fact that Corcoran is. And so I just want to identify some of those creative solutions. Others is the support that you've given us. Tonight we had some pivot decisions in terms of it's time to make these. It was not in the 2024 budget to have a community development department. It wasn't there. but we absolutely need it, and you supported it, and we're figuring out how to build it. And we have that department now, and we have a director as of tonight. Those were not things that were planned, yeah, so I do want to say. And we have a finance manager as of tonight, who's also. So those sorts of decisions that you're making are communicating your support to staff. That's not lost on me, that's not lost on them. And other thing that we need to keep in mind is we need to continue investing, not just with retention recruitment strategies like that, but the professional development component. We have not, everybody hasn't been getting what they need to be their best selves.